of all, let's just answer the question, what is the Geographic Thesaurus? The Geographic Thesaurus is an internal hierarchical table, basically, of geo-units. And a geo-unit is just some political or non-political unit that is defined as a geo-unit. So very easy would be a continent or a country or a state or a province or a county. Those are generally the levels that are most frequently used in the Geographic Thesaurus, but you can actually keep on adding hierarchical listings as needed. So for example, if you wanted if your portal wanted to have national parks or state parks or anything, any units below another unit, those can be added too. We don't have any tools to like auto add them, but you can add them as place names. You can also add, if I'm remembering correctly, water units too. So there's like some oceans and lakes and things that you could add. Most of those not really done in current geographic thesauruses. They're pretty much just country, state, and county values. But those are like, it can be expanded much like a taxonomic thesaurus so that you have, multiple nesting hierarchies. And I'm going to throw this link in the chat because I will point out that pretty much the things that I'm going to cover today are covered in the Portal Manager Guide section of the Geographic Thesaurus, but probably some other things are not super explained because our Portal Manager Guide is very drafty and does not include a lot of things relating to portals. So this is just an example of, here I have a geographic unit. It can be a parent of some other unit. Yes, I know the United States is not in Europe. These are just examples. But similarly to the taxonomic thesaurus, you can also have synonymy. So you can have United States is the same thing as USA, is the same thing of US of A, is the same thing as Estados Unidos. So you can have multiple things. If someone searches for USA, then they're going to also get United States records and things like that. And then, these are parents of subunits, states in this case of the United States. So the way that this works is, so in the main search, you can search for a country from a drop-down list, and it's going to give you the results for not only that verbatim country, but also the countries that are synonyms of it. So in this case, Shqipëria is Albania, believe it or not. And so if you do a search for Shqipëria, you're going to get results from Albania and Shqipëria, and if there are any other names for Albania, then those will that are in the Geographic Thesaurus, you'll get all those results. So that's nice, handy for if people have different preferences of how they type in those names, then you'll be able to get those search results regardless. Okay, so I also want to give a clarification about what the Geographic Thesaurus is not. So it is mainly, just like the taxonomic thesaurus, it's mainly for reference for ease of connecting pieces of data, but it is not a canonical source of political boundaries. Like it has to be curated, and political boundaries do change over time. They change depending on what country you're referring to for the source of your data. So it really depends on the history and the active curation of the thesaurus. So you may have differing opinions across portals, and that's okay. It depends on how the community wants their geographic units to be delineated. It's also not an inflexible index, and by that I mean you do not have to select something from the Geographic Thesaurus in order to put something into the country, state, county field. So just like the taxonomic thesaurus, you can just enter your own verbatim values if you want. If your protocol is to put, I don't know, it was a Lane or Lynn County, I don't know which one, and you put those both in the county field, it's going to let you do that. That's not the recommended way to put two counties, but if that's your protocol, it's going to let you do that. Again, it's non-standard geographic names can be input into those fields without problem. Um, and also, this is a little bit of like a database nuance that's a little tricky, but it's not a replacement for geographic terms being stored in the main specimen table. And what I mean by that is in databases, you'll often split things out into separate tables to make them more efficient, to make the database more efficient. So you'll have like, here's all my specimen data, here's all my geography data. But we don't store, for example, country values in the specimen data table. In this case, currently in Symbiota 3.4, the geographic thesaurus does not act as this separate thing. It's like a reference, but most of the data is still in the main specimen table. So it's not just like everything has to be indexed to the geographic thesaurus in order for it to have a geographic location. So that's something a little bit different about Symbiota currently is it's not super split out and hierarchical and everything has to align with an index, a spatial index and a taxonomic index and things like that, which has its benefits and its drawbacks. So benefits being that you can enter those non-standard names and it's not a big deal. Drawbacks being the database tables are a little bit bigger and sometimes searches can be less performant or they're a little slower. So that's how it works currently. Okay, so where is the geographic thesaurus actually used? Like, where does this apply? Like I showed you before, it works in the public search. So this is a drop-down menu. You've probably started typing at one point and then seen that you get all these options. Those options all come from the geographic thesaurus. That's the case for any of the geo units that are in the thesaurus. So I think most portals have countries and states. For most countries, there are states. County levels, sometimes you have them for like Mexico and the US, and it depends on kind of the geographic scope of your portal. But most of them will have countries, some states, maybe some counties. And if you want more of those to be available um, for your portal, then you just need to coordinate with your portal manager, your portal administrator, or the Symbiota Support Hub, and we can help bring those data in. Note that the geographic thesaurus, as far as I understand, currently does not affect searches in the record search form. So this is when you go click edit occurrence records and there's that search that you can do in your collection only. So if you do country equals USA, you're only going to get country equals USA verbatim. You're not going to get also United States, also Estados Unidos, things like that. So just be aware of that this is a more literal search than the public search. Okay, another tool that uses the geographic thesaurus is in the occurrence editor, so the main data entry page, and that's the drop-down menus. So you'll see if you put in Mexico, it's only going to show you geo terms below the rank of Mexico. Got Baja California, etc. And the same would happen if there were county values underneath Baja California, then you would see those drop down under county. This is very similar to how Symbiota has functioned for a long, long time. It's just that they used to get that data from these other lookup tables, and now it's all one unified geographic thesaurus that can be edited using a front-end interface instead of going into the database and editing some stuff back there. The geographic thesaurus is also used in some newer data cleaning, well, old and new data cleaning tools. So the political geography cleaning tools use the geographic thesaurus, and then also the newish tools that use specimen coordinates. So if I were to go into record, and it has coordinates. And if I change these values to be something that's not in the boundaries of the particular or of where this coordinate is, then it would give me a little like, hey, that's not in the right place. Or if you had a state that doesn't exist under a specific country, then it might give you a flag there too. And I'll touch more on that when I talk about polygons too, because those tools in the occurrence editor use polygons. Okay, so here's the specimen coordinates and the political geography items that I was talking about. So these are all under, so I'll just go to my home to lead us through there. So I go to my profile, the name of my collection, data cleaning tool. And if I scroll down, these political geography tools, those have been there for a pretty long time, and they used to use those old lookup tables, and now they use the geographic thesaurus. And then the specimen coordinates, these new tools as of Symbiota 3.4, those use the geographic thesaurus too. And I think, yeah, if you use this tool here, this is specifically using polygons, which we will talk about momentarily. I'm going to pause because I think I see a question. In the geographic cleaning tools in ecdysis, when I look to clean up null county and non-null locality, there are separate lists for USA and United States. Yes, so I think that because different entries in the thesaurus exist for USA and United States, it's asking you like, hey, which one do you want? Well, actually, it's giving you. These are the ones below USA. These are the ones below United States. They're not super sophisticated yet in linking together all the synonyms of geographic units, at least in the data cleaning tools. Mostly those have been developed for the searching.
Yeah, it makes a long list. So when I'm trying to work on Michigan, and I've complained about this before, it's like you can do one county, and then when it reloads the page, you're back at the top, and you could scroll back down. So the fact
Yeah,
that there's a whole list full of USA first, and then another list, it's like I'm scrolling or searching to get back to where I was.
yeah, that makes sense. You could go do a batch edit and change all of your USAs to United States or vice versa, whichever one you want. And then that would unify everything in your collection. So that would at least give you one list instead of two.
Yeah, what I would love is either returning to the place where I left off or to be able to use those drop downs and do a whole bunch of counties and then click do it. So it's not like,
Mm,
because I've knocked off a lot of the ones that were multiple records within one thing or by doing batch updates and stuff, but a lot of them are just like one at a time. It's just
yeah,
annoying.
I totally get that. Yeah, it's if you guys are having trouble visualizing what she's saying, it's when you go to your geography cleaning tools and you have like questionable counties and
It was the
oh, not
other,
questionable counties. Sorry, the other one.
yeah.
Now it's going to load for a long time. Well, if you have that big long list that says like, hey, we're not sure if it's in this county's within this state, this county's within this state. Oh, this is right. Okay. You have to go like click, replace, click, replace, click, replace. And that means that it reloads the page every time. So then you end up at the top of the list. Known, not user-friendly aspect of that tool for sure. Thanks, Julie.
No problem.
Oh, and I just showed you the screen, but these geographic tools are drawing from the geographic thesaurus. So whatever you are seeing in these lists, because it's saying, hey, this is the state of Alaska, here are all the county values I have for Alaska. That's why it's giving you that drop-down list. And if you're like, hey, this actually should be an existing value in the geographic thesaurus, then that's when you should reach out to your portal manager, portal administrator, or the Symbiota Support Hub, and we can help fill that out for you. Okay, so how is the geographic thesaurus managed? Well, I kind of already hinted to it. Um, Kind of originally, how it was created is in many portals, the previous lookup tables were just brought over because the community was already using those. But in newer portals, and I think for many existing portals after the fact, we have updated or we've created the geographic thesaurus anew from an SQL script that was used in the creation of the geographic or the population of the geographic thesaurus. So you could go into the code base and go look at this big long table basically of all of the values that are put into the geographic thesaurus. Most of those came from, I believe, well, I don't know. I have to remember where those came from. They're in an SQL script currently. And of course, like I said, it's not a canonical source. It's just like, hey, we think this is a complete list of all the countries. But then you have some portals who, for example, may accept Somaliland and some who have not done that. And so you might have differences between portals. So the geographic thesaurus is managed only currently by super administrators. So unlike the taxonomic thesaurus, there's no like geothesaurus editor permissions level. Maybe that could be developed sometime in the future, but currently it's just by super administrators. So that generally is like a handful or even one or two people who are kind of the managers of your portal, and then members of the Symbiota Support Hub. And they have the ability to go in and make these changes in this interface. So what does it look like? Here's just a couple of here's a screenshot, but I'm going to give you kind of more of a walkthrough in a live portal. So if you are the portal administrator, then you'll find the geographic thesaurus tools under your administrative functions, geographic thesaurus. And then you can explore it from here. It's pretty simple, just like the taxonomic thesaurus, where you can click on things and see the hierarchy underneath them. So, for example, in Africa, there are 123 children geographic terms. And here they are. We have a lot of country names, but we also have different translations of those country names. So these are, for example, Egypt in Egyptian is Masr. I don't know how to say that correctly, but that's Egyptian for Egypt. And then if you click on one of these, then you can see the children under there, if there are any children. So these are state province values underneath Tunisia. And then if you click on this again, then you can see these are the values underneath, for county underneath Tunisia. I didn't actually know that we had some Arabic counties in here. Should probably put some transliterations in there. And it's pretty standard as you would think to edit things in here. If you want a new geographic term, you click on the plus sign, you put the name here, abbreviation, you select from the rank. So here are the ranks that I was telling you about that you can add besides country, state, and county. There are municipalities. You can add a city or a town or just a generic place name, and a place name can be nested within anything. So if you wanted to make national parks, that would probably be a subset of like a country. Whereas if you had a state park, maybe that would be a subset of a state, like a child of a state. You can even have lakes, ponds, rivers, and creeks if those are of interest to your portal. There aren't necessarily any search terms for river, creek, lake, pond, so I don't know what that would be useful for at the moment, but there's at least one tool that would be able to search that in the future. Alan says, I presume the thesaurus does not include incorrect spellings. Yes, there's no misspellings in here as far as we know, just orthographic, well, synonymy variants, so like language variants. Can non-super administrators look at this stuff? I don't think you can look at the geographic thesaurus if you're not a super administrator. Like, I think that the whole interface is locked behind the super administrator permissions. But let's see. If you go to this link, see if you can open it. You probably can't edit anything, but James says I can look at things. Yeah, it might just be kind of hidden. And then if you want to edit a term, say I want to edit South Africa, then I can click this pencil icon and I can edit any of the values here. And this is where you can change the parent term too. In some earlier versions of the Geographic Thesaurus, we didn't have continents. It went straight from countries or straight to countries. And so there was a lot of editing of parent terms that had to happen afterwards. Okay, so the Geographic Thesaurus, like I said, is managed by whoever's managing your portal. If you have any suggestions or you want to have a conversation with your community about the terms that you want in that thesaurus, then go ahead and open that conversation. Okay, now we go to a slightly more complicated aspect of the Geographic Thesaurus, which is the geographic polygons. And you probably saw some when I was clicking around, but these are GeoJSON objects, which is just some way of showing a spatial polygon or the boundaries of a political unit. And they're saved um, along with the values that are in the geographic thesaurus. I believe in a separate table, right, Logan? They're in like a geopolygons table.
Yeah, they're stored separately for
Yeah.
like
So they're all
indexing requirements.
stored in index so that they're faster than just a bunch of text fields. And geographic polygons, a couple of important things to know is that they're not populated in every portal. They take up a lot of space. So if they're not going to be used very often, we're not going to just populate polygons for every single portal. And for the most part, the geographic polygons that exist in the portals that have them have been imported from the GeoBoundaries API. So the GeoBoundaries project has just made a bunch of rather simplistic polygons of countries and subsequent political boundaries available via API. And so there's a tool called the Geographic Harvester that largely Logan worked on that is able to pull in those boundaries and automatically add them to your geographic terms. And these polygons are referenced by the coordinate validator tool, which we talked about, I think, 1 or 2 months ago. And that's a new tool available in Symbiota 3.4. And then that's what is allowing those automated coordinate checks in the occurrence editor. So like I was mentioning before, if you enter a certain value in county and then you georeference the record, if you're georeferencing it outside of the boundaries of that geoterm, then it's going to be like, hey, are you sure you want to put that coordinate there? Because that's not in the right county according to what you've put into the county value, the county field. That's what it looks like. It says, are the coordinates accurate? They map to blah, blah, blah. And they recommend uh, going and fixing that. You can click OK and ignore it if you're like, no, for sure this is right. But in that case, you might get to the bottom of why that's right and the geographic thesaurus is wrong and suggest a change. Okay, so that is the gist of the Geographic Thesaurus, and now we'd like to open it up to questions or comments. Okay, so James is saying that he can edit in CCH2, but the edits don't seem to save. Oh, interesting. So the you need the permissions to be a super admin to view and edit. You can look at those edit pages, but you can't make any write queries from the user interface unless you're a super admin, is my guess. Probably something we should button up, but that's currently how it works.
Yeah, I agree.
Logan's like, yeah, you should for sure not see the edit pages if you can't edit.
Yeah, especially when you're
And
not.
Mark agrees.
I have a question. How
Yeah,
much do the geographic polygons take up in the database?
it's a good question. I guess it depends. I mean, you mean the current ones that we harvest from GeoBoundaries? I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. Frank says, can we add existing polygons as children to existing names of countries, states, etc.? Can you elaborate on that, Frank? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, sure. So, say, for example, somebody does an inventory, a checklist of a certain, say, a Forest Service district or so, and I made a polygon of that area. So that polygon already exists. Now, if I add a place name to the geographic Thesaurus, I would add that place name to, say, the county where that polygon is in. But I can't necessarily add that polygon that I made before, or I mean, I'm answering my own question. I could probably go get the definition of that polygon and then copy it over, but that kind of then duplicates that polygon, right?
Yeah, so I think in that case, if you're making a polygon, you're making a polygon of like a subset of a place. Like it's not of the county, it's like a thing in the county, right?
For example, like the Forest Service has these Red Rock Ranger District area, or I don't know,
Right.
certain areas. Like you mentioned, national parks, state parks, etc., etc. So now, if I make a polygon of that state park or national park, and then I use it for an inventory, so I make it in that checklist before I actually add the place name, because many people might work on their checklist, but they don't have access to the geographic thesaurus. Then the only way to get this into the geographic thesaurus is currently not by linking that polygon to the thesaurus, but only by copy pasting it over, right?
Yeah, you would probably just create a new thing, and this is your Red Rock, blah, blah, blah. You make it a place name, and then you can click this edit polygon, or you can just
Yeah.
copy paste the GeoJSON that you already have in here, and then it's just gonna stick that right in there.
But then I basically have duplicates of the GeoJSON files.
Yes, in two different places. One is
Yeah.
in the checklist area, and one is in the geographic polygons table.
I have
So
another
following that
question, but I'm
example,
shut
can
up
you
now.
make a system? I'm sorry. Can you make a system of, say, watersheds or river basins and streams and
Sure.
have those, layered as well?
Yeah, your only question is what are you going to use those for? Because like place names they're not really searchable yet. So you could definitely have them in the geographic thesaurus, but there's currently no reference to them. Like they would be in the thesaurus, but they wouldn't really be utilized for anything.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking for like, aquatic records, fishes, amphibians and whatnot,
Hmm.
aquatic plants and others.
Yeah, I would have to check with Ed and the rest of the team, but I don't remember like there is a water body field now in Symbiota, but I don't know if it automatically references those lake, pond, creek, river things. Do you know that,
Okay.
Logan? I kind of feel like it doesn't.
No. I mean we're just storing them as like separate. Um, like those fields aren't used like for the most part, we're only using like the country. They only impact on like country county level when we're doing like nesting. So we'll do like some automatic like parsing of like what is a parent of other things.
Hmm.
So those are just more like once it gets to, like the water level, we don't have like the hierarchies mapped out for them. So there's
Right.
no like it's just a label at this point.
Hmm.
Okay. I was just curious because I know that in Esri there are layers, yeah, such layers.
You're thinking far too
Yeah.
sophisticated.
Yeah, sorry if I cut you off
Um,
there, Frank. So, you have another question, perhaps?
If I may, I'm not sure. Yeah, so I have both a suggestion and a question. So one suggestion would be that the list of place names, so the county, country, whatever, all these things in place, is not quite the same as when you enter things like island. For example, in the Darwin Core, you now have island name and these things. So it might make sense to kind of match these terms, these options. That was the suggestion that I have. The other thing that I would like you to do, if you may, I mean, you showed that in the CCH2 you have really nice synonyms. I often kind of struggle with because that's something that people have to set up. Make some like decide. Okay, maybe I want to use just United States, and all the other stuff I want to make synonym. So, but then in the Thesaurus I already have these other things there. So maybe you want to showcase how to make these synonyms.
how to synonymize like names in the Geographic Thesaurus.
Yeah, because in the taxonomic Thesaurus it's relatively trivial to do this, but in the Geographic Thesaurus it's a little bit more complicated, I think.
Yeah. So let's see. An example of that would be, okay, so we have USA, United States. I think we have Estados Unidos. So all you need to do in that case is if we had Estados Unidos, then you hit the pencil icon and then you say what the preferred term is. And that's the same thing as like a synonym because, it's like, well, this depends on the portal, what their preferred, rather, what is the accepted name. And so then you just select something from the drop-down list. And this is all the things on the same level. So it's only going to show you things that are below North America and that are at the level of country. And then if you click Save Edits, then those become synonyms.
Sorry to interrupt you though. That is kind of my headache. If you go to the preferred term, the list is in that area where you're looking for, say North America, it's sort of endless. When you showed it, it showed US, and so it didn't show what kind of preferred term I previously selected. So it can be rather confusing that basically then you create a synonym of something that should also be a synonym, and if you do that, then you want to clean it up. And the thing that is a synonym of what should be a synonym, if you want to then make that a synonym of something else, then the whole thing breaks down. So this is kind of
Yeah, this
a bit of
list
the
should
headache.
ideally be only the preferred terms
Right.
on this level of geography. Yeah, for
Yes, and
sure.
that is what I kind of often struggle with, really.
For sure. Yeah, and one caveat I didn't make early on in this tutorial is that the Geographic Thesaurus, because it's accessed by so few people and it's not actually used all that often, it has not gone through tons of rigorous user testing. So there's still plenty of user interface things that like need tweaking. So we're happy to hear that feedback.
And maybe the other thing that would be interesting to point out in that context is that often political boundaries and place names are not only not concurrent, but it's also that there's ways to enter names. So you could put like anything in there as a so for example the Maldives or something like the Falklands. Many thesauri have that as at the country level, even though they're actually not even counties of. I mean, the Falklands are not a county of Britain, but they're also not a place in Britain, and so they don't fit any of the categories, and so it's kind of, so what do you do with these kind of things? They're not.
Yeah, it's kind of up to whether you as a portal want to treat them as like, okay, they're just going to be kind of a country level for us because that's geographically makes more sense, or if you're going to be strictly political with your boundaries. So this system is agnostic to that. You kind of just have to decide as a community what you're going to say is a country versus a state versus a county. And we actually had a comment come in about like, hey, there are no counties in Mexico. We have municipios, which kind of makes you want to put in a municipality. But the Darwin Core description or definition of county is just whatever is below state. And the definition of state is whatever is below country. So that's a little nuance that you kind of have to pay attention to as well. Like counties don't exist everywhere. States don't even exist everywhere.
Yeah, if I may jump in, down here in Louisiana, we have absolutely no counties, and we're a little prickly
You have
about it.
parishes, right?
Yeah, people try to call our parishes counties, and it kind of rubs me wrong when I have a specimen from Orleans Parish and I have to put it in a box called county. And, then it shows up in a column called county, and, that's not what it is. And it's the same thing up in Alaska where they have boroughs, and of course, other countries,
Hmm.
same thing. And I don't know if
Yeah.
way to, at least for my collection, which is mostly Louisiana specimens, can we make it the default, say, parish rather than county?
But I think
Someday, perhaps.
if I may chime in there, I think we're kind of splitting hairs here because actually, if you go around the world, the political units are always going to be different across different
Sure.
areas, and so what a county is in Britain is quite a different thing in a county in the US. So I do think these categories are essentially just holders for a hierarchy that is still 3 or 4 tiered, basically, right? So I would still recommend that you put your parishes, and you might want to add parish into that field so to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a county. But you can still use that category of the field in the database, because otherwise, how is the database going to deal with all these variations, right?
And I'd be happy to do that, of course, but it autofills with just Orleans or St. Tammany or Tangipahoa or, whatever the parish is, and it doesn't add parish. And I don't know if wasn't sure if I should just take what it gives me or if I should add parish to all of
Probably
those.
talk to your portal administrator how they want to handle this and tell them, okay, this is what I would prefer, and then you can kind of fight with them. What is your preferred way to do it?
Yeah, because I guess the
Yeah, you
thesaurus
could.
knows what all our parishes are, but they want us to call them counties. So, okay.
I have another
Yeah, you could
functionality question.
just.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say it could if you think it's appropriate, you could just be like, hey, can we add parish to all of these county values in the thesaurus so that they auto-populate that way? Like that's probably just a conversation that hasn't been had yet.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can chime in, I'm working with a USDA plants database, and what they have for these categories is that they have what is called state level geographic units and then county level geographic units. So they take into consideration the various terms for those, but maintain the hierarchy. So I don't know if you want to do something like that, but I think that's what's implied in the Symbiota system,
And I
right?
know for the box for state, it says state/province.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it could be
if you
oblast or
put county
prefecture,
slash parish, but then it would be county/parish/borough/
If you go across
municipal.
if you go across the world, there's no state and provinces in many countries of the world. So,
Sure.
in Germany, for example, things would be called Bundesstaat. So it's you can't put possibly every little variation of these hierarchies in there. So it's more like a level that these fields are designed, and that's what I think Darwin Core also tries to imply.
Yeah,
I think it was
they just
county
had to
level, but yeah.
they had to call it something and they decided to call it county for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't even know if Tadwig is based out of the US. It's very US heavy, but I don't even know if it's based out of the US. But
Copenhagen,
yeah, your
probably.
point is a good one. Additionally, like if you go to geo boundaries where we're bringing in the polygons from, they don't call them countries, state, counties either. They call them administrative unit 1, administrative unit 2, actually 0, administrative unit 1, administrative unit 2. And so the harvester actually is really powerful. It has the ability to bring in the administrative units as well as their polygons. Like if your geographic thesaurus didn't have municipios from Mexico, you could actually bring those all in together. But
Yeah,
anyways,
the
just to
US federal government has a term they call county equivalents that includes parishes and
yeah,
boroughs and
it's pretty much that.
independent cities and things that are at that level. But
Thea
that's a
says, I've
federal
heard,
designation.
yeah, Thea says that I've heard them referred to as third order political entities. Yeah. So the reason you see county in Symbiota is because we're just following Darwin Core.
So I don't want to hijack the whole meeting, but I have another question. Once you designate something as a country or a county or something, you can change this still, right?
hmm
The functionality, okay.
I had a couple
I
of
want to go to,
questions, if you don't mind.
oh yeah, I was just about to get to yours, Dorothy. I had
Thank you.
noticed that we
Thanks.
hadn't mentioned them. So Dorothy asks, to whom do we suggest an edit to the polygons? I often get an error message for data near state boundaries, even when I'm certain that the coordinates are correct. Just whoever is the administrator of your portal. So if you're talking about the Lichen portal, you'd probably talk to Frank. You can CC us if you want. Or if you're in, I don't remember, what portal are you in, Dorothy?
I use the Bryophyte portal and the Consortium of Northeast Herbaria portal.
Okay, yeah, so you'd probably contact Patrick for the Consortium of Northeastern, and then there's Blanca, who you can talk to about bryophytes, and if she decides that she doesn't want to deal with it, she can always send it to us.
Okay.
Although if you have a wrong polygon, or if the polygon is too rough, I don't know what I would do with that, right? Because I can edit the texts or the synonyms, but I cannot correct the polygon itself.
That's a good question. Yeah, so the polygons, as I think we mentioned in our last meeting, like you might get some erroneous errors in the geographic coordinates data cleaning tools because it's saying like, oh, these are out of the boundaries, and it's like, no, it's just that there was this tiny rock that went out into the ocean and the polygon sliced it off. It's kind of like if you keep on getting that and you know that it's right, you can ignore it. Or if it really bothers you and you keep on placing things there, then we can probably make a tweak to the polygon. Like there's something that's juked out. We could put that polygon in some sort of editor and then make some little adjustments so that we could include.
All
Fix it.
the polygon data are freely available on the internet for Vermont. I can send you some information, Blanca, if that would help. They're in a GIS shape files.
We'd need them in a GeoJSON format, but I think some tools exist for fixing those up. The problem is like
Yeah.
the more specific you are, the more space you end up filling, and like
Yeah.
it's okay. It's just that there's some level to which you got to stop getting more granular because you're just splitting the hairs at some point.
I was
Sure.
just
Right.
going to say, for the checklist, you can make these polygons also, and if they're really specific, that we had that for South America, we did a couple of polygons there for the different states, and the thing was getting so large that it basically would not load. So the checklist then wouldn't load. I mean, because the checklist runs queries on, okay, what vouchers are in those polygons. And so if you have a very detailed, fine-tuned polygon, with very detailed margins, then the queries are so large that they are basically don't they crash the site, sort of a thing. So you need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, good point. Anna asks, what is the error rate for the polygon edges, aka how close to the edge does something have to be to trigger that error? I don't think there really is an error margin. It's just like it is on that line or it is not, like it's within or it's without. Like there is a hairline. The problem that we're talking about here is that sometimes the polygons are not precise enough to like match up with all the nooks and crannies of a very detailed border. For example, like a river or an ocean. Like coastlines are super squiggly, and at some point a polygon has to stop being so specific to just be functional. Yeah, James.
This is something have been thinking about for a long time, and I don't have a good answer for, but I'm curious what you all think. And that is when we have taxonomic names on a specimen and we synonymize that with another name so that we can search for it, we don't want to actually change the name on the specimen itself in most cases, at least not initially. But in some cases, or maybe many cases, with the geographic thesaurus, we might actually want to change that. And so for my collection, for example, I want everything to say United States. I want to change everything that's USA to United States. And some folks may have different thoughts on this, I suppose. So like, should we change Deutschland to Germany or, things like that? But from a data perspective, that sort of makes sense to me. So I'm wondering if you've thought about making a tool to selectively do this, I suppose, because I don't think we'd want to institute it on a portal basis. This is where I sort of struggle, is like, how would we handle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that currently the tools only function to map things to geoterms that are or are not, but they don't use that functionality of preferred term yet. So, but that could be something that's developed in the future.
Yeah, I mean,
We don't have taxonomic thesaurus tools for that either, so.
I'd almost want to have an option where someone types in USA in the editor and it gets replaced by United States.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're like turn on preferred names only.
Yeah.
But what you're mentioning about badge updating taxonomy is also not trivial, So that tool is not very. I mean, say I wanted to change everything that's Caloplaca Ignaria to Polyblastidium or something, then that's a bit of a headache right now too. So it's not easily done either. So
Yeah, yeah. Just like the taxonomic thesaurus, the geographic thesaurus is not super good for like standardizing necessarily. It's just for linking things together.
Does that account for any historical geographic areas, such as you have some older records from, say, the USSR, which no longer exists, or, the Habsburg Empire or whatever?
No, it doesn't have any granularity as to like overlapping synonymy, like if you have USSR and it contains Russia and other countries, like it's very simplistic. It's either a synonym of a thing or it's a parent or a child of a thing. It can't be, well, it's a synonym of both Belarus and Russia. So no, it doesn't do that well. But I mean, the taxonomic thesaurus doesn't do that very well either because that similar thing kind of happens with taxonomy.
Yeah, just thinking aloud, I think that's a really good option that we have images of specimen labels. So you can see, when and where it was collected. And then in the record, you
For
can use the
sure.
modern terms as to, where it was collected at.
Hmm. Any other comments? We just have a few more minutes. Questions? Oh, yes, I'm so sorry, Dorothy. I did not ask your second question. How does the Geographic Thesaurus handle different geodetic datums as far as mapping is concerned? Great question. It doesn't really. It pretty much just uses WGS 84, I assume, because that's the most widely used right now. So if you had an older datum, you would probably have to convert it to a newer datum before it will be accurate. I'm not sure about whether you should convert like coordinates from older datums, though. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it.
There are tools to convert. I use NAD 27, North American Datum 27, for many years,
Mm-hmm.
until primarily because I was mapping my collections on old topo maps. Before I converted to NAD 83, which is essentially the same as WGS 84, at least for the US.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm entering data into the Bryophyte portal, I always put in the coordinates and then I put in NAD 27 for those records.
Mm-hmm.
But I can go online to USGS they have a conversion thing, and you can type in the coordinates and it'll spit out the coordinates in more recent datums. And it sounds like that's what I should do if I want them to map correctly when I use the mapping function. I also noticed Norton Miller apparently did the same thing, because his records from that same era are also in NAD 27, although New York State hasn't entered that into the portal. So you only know that if you actually have a specimen in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not actually sure whether it takes into account the different geodetic datums. Do any of the devs know? Another one of our devs has joined us, Mark Fisher. Hi, Mark.
I don't
I'm
know.
not exactly familiar with how the point data gets converted on like the occurrence level, because we translate it in the background and store all the points in a normalized system to do all the searching.
Mm-hmm.
So Ed is probably the best person to ask of like if we're doing the conversion at the record. I mean, if we're not, then that's a problem.
Yeah. So don't change yet. We have to get to the bottom of whether it's changing it for you.
Yeah, of course, am I still live? Yeah. It also depends on the uncertainty, because if the uncertainty is greater than the difference in the
True.
coordinates, it doesn't matter a whole lot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, depending on where on the earth you are, but if you're in, Kansas and your error is one difference because of the
You're right.
geodetic datum versus 1,000 meters, it's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe it's not that big of a
Yeah.
difference. Good point.
But I bet
Great.
just quickly, my doctoral specimens I collected for my doctoral research in Nepal were all mapped as Everest 1836. So, which is what was there. So I'm
Cool.
I'm getting them into the Pringle herbarium now, and I'm converting all of those to WGS 84.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what actually would be a great help is the plus minus already. You know, that you don't have like a record on the wrong side of the earth, basically. Something that's in Arizona showing up in Indonesia or vice versa.
And if you're like, what on earth is a geodetic datum? Definitely look it up. It's kind of geographically mind transforming when you understand that, oh, there's a lot of different ways to put this round earth on a flat piece of paper or a flat software. Great. Well, we're at time. It's been great chatting with y'all. Let us know if you have any additional questions that come up. And if you have any suggestions about future Symbiota support group meetings, we're also happy to hear topic suggestions or requests. And we'll see you guys next month.
Great. Thanks. Bye.